I'm Garrett Gunderson, and this is Win the Day with James Whittaker.
You're listening to Win the Day with James Whittaker.
What we doing live echoes in eternity.
Broadcasting from Los Angeles, California. Here's your host, James Whittaker.
Let's go!
Hey winners, welcome back to Win the Day. If this is your first time here, we sit down with some of the world's true change makers to give you all the tips, tools, and strategies to win the day every day. The quote for this episode, it comes from Franklin D. Roosevelt and says, "The only limit to our realization of tomorrow is our doubts of today." Joining me in the studio is personal finance expert Garrett Gunderson. Known for his unique approach to wealth creation and life design, Garrett is the author of 10 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Killing Sacred Cows. Garrett is an acclaimed speaker who uses entertainment to educate his audience. His comedy special, The American Ream, fantastic title, breaks down all the myths about money and covers everything from Wall Street and retirement to cryptocurrency. When he's not writing or speaking, Garrett runs Cash Cabin Immersions, where he helps people build their family office, family constitution, and teaches them how to create their richest life. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to turn a poverty cycle into generational wealth, the biggest mistakes people make with their money, why discovering your own value is the ultimate foundation, and how to create your richest life. Before we begin, the right bit of inspiration can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. So there's a friend or loved one out there who needs to hear this episode or could use some help to win the day. Share it with them right now. All right, let's win the day with Garrett Gunderson. Garrett, great to see you, mate. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Dude, you're like a 10 out of 10, man. You just like nail everything. It's so articulate, and I'm inspired. We haven't even started the interview, so I'm happy.
The bar is high for the start of the interview.
Yeah, it's like I've been introduced before. It's like, oh, this guy is so funny. Maybe the funniest guy I know. I'm like, whoa. Let's like keep the bar halfway there. And if I'm funny, we'll let them discover it versus Seinfeld once was upset because they introduced him as the funniest comedian. And he said after 5 minutes, it was the worst that he ever gave because the expectations were so up there.
Oh, and it's a horrible energy to kick off when someone just butchers your introduction as well. It's like they've taken the notes that your team have provided and they've just gone walkabout with it. And you're like, what am I even doing here?
Okay, so it's the worst introduction I ever had. By far is like 10 years ago, I'm speaking at this event, and the guy is a straight up compulsive liar. Don't know this. So he gets up, he's like, our next speaker owns all the skyscrapers in Utah. I'm like, I own 45% of a 3-story. Don't know if that's a skyscraper. He's like, all the faculty member here, they're all his clients. He gives them financial advice. I'm like, I don't even know half of the people that are on the faculty here that are the speakers. I mean, it just went on and on. And the best part of it is I live in Utah. And so he goes, last time I was in Utah, I kneeled down and prayed with him and his wife, which is a problem on 2 levels. Number one, okay, I was Catholic then, so that's somewhat accurate, but he thought I was Mormon, and Mormons don't kneel down at church, right? And then I walked out and I was like, I don't know who just got introduced.
Yeah, you're looking behind you like, who else is going to come on?
But I look forward to meeting them or becoming them one day. I didn't know how else to handle it. That was what I said people after. And I went to his room afterwards. I was like, what was that? And he apologized. And I made the mistake of going back and speaking another time. He did it again, and I just had this epiphany. I'm like, I don't ever have to come back. The best way to have this resolved is just say no and move on with my life. The drama was gone, the lies, and that's how that happened.
The aspirational intro.
So like there's the butcher one that you're talking about where they just like read, and that I've had that, and they're stumbling on names and stuff. I'm like, no introduction's better. Just all come out.
Let me do my thing. Yeah.
I also at one event, I was emceeing. And I was doing comedy at this event that I already spoke at, but it was like the last night. And so I was the MC introducing the first comedian. Well, I was the second comedian, then there was the headliner. So I'm introducing myself. So I was just like, oh, our next comedian, funniest man alive. Some say probably the best looking comedian to ever grace the stage. I just keep going and I go, Garrett Gunderson. And there's people that didn't know I did comedy in the crowd, horrified, as if someone had just not shown up and I was filling in impromptu and going to do some stand-up. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so great. Speaking of comedy, and I know we've got so many things to talk about, I keep stand-up comedy is something that I have on my bucket list to do one day. So in my notes app on my Apple devices, like my iPhone, I write down just humorous things that have happened. So an example of that would be I was parked the car on Abbot Kinney in Venice. And I got a parking ticket, even though I'd moved the car. And I'm like, this is, I'm going to stand on my high horse here and I'm going to contest this thing. So I emailed the city and said, I actually had moved the car. I'm not going to pay this ticket. And they wrote back and said, this is important to us. We will respond within 2 years. I couldn't believe that. I'm like, 2 years? And then when they got back to me within 6 months, the expectations were so low that I was like, wow, this is actually a really fast response. So
Government needs to embrace this.
Yes, exactly. So all things like that I have written down and stored for the day that I can make the leap and follow your footsteps. So what do you do to sort of collate all the different stories and anecdotes so you have some material ready to go when you're finally ready to prepare for stage?
I just text myself just like that. And then I'll read through those texts and then be like, ooh. And then my process from there is I co-create off stage. A lot of comedians co-create on stage. I've seen some of the greats formulate jokes that aren't ready in front of an entire stadium. And I'm like, wow, that's ballsy, But my wife is a critic, so I'll take it to her. And she'll be like, I don't think that joke's ready. I'm like, okay, fair. But it has me go back. So I actually like to speak it out loud to one or two people and then see what the reaction is and then refine it. And I'm excited for you to do comedy because the funniest jokes are not planned. Mm-hmm. Like if you're in a comedy room and someone interacts with the crowd and it's really just in the moment, the crowd responds in a much bigger way because they're part of the process. Yeah. Versus being being done to them, it's done with them. And so I was scared as hell to go do my first open mic, but it was exhilarating when I was done. And it was you'll do great because you've got the stage presence, you've got the quick wit. It's just a matter of it's a new format. I didn't even touch the mic my first one. I folded my arms. I was scared as shit, but we did it.
Were you doing it with a bunch of people who'd never done comedy before and it was everyone's first night, or were you joining a bunch of sort of seasoned veterans?
So it was an open mic, but Utah has this really great open mic at Wise Guys. And what happened was I went to Italy for a summer, had a lot of downtime. And when I came back, we were at a baseball game, which can be slow, and I'm making my wife laugh, and she's like, that's kind of funny. Who told you that? I'm like, that's from my own brain. And kind of funny, I translated comedic God. That's how I heard it. And then the first time I'd spoken in months, my buddy Keith is like, oh, our next speaker's hilarious. Just kept saying hilarious. And I'm like, I'm doing a financial talk. I wasn't planning on being hilarious. So I told some jokes and the crowd laughed. So I walked off stage and I called my buddy that was runner up on Last Comic Standing. I'm like, I want to do an open mic as soon as possible. Can you be at the office tomorrow? I got an idea. My hair is down. I was a little bit darker hair then. I said, I look like Jesus. I just don't have his powers. That was my whole premise. And I wrote 4 minutes of jokes on it, did it. And he's like, dude, you're great. You should open for us. So I actually opened for them for years.
Funny.
Just as a hobby.
Yeah. It seems like you're in the process of discovering those powers anyway. Yeah.
And then I just ended up filming a comedy special around the topic of money. And it's cool because people are more when they laugh, they remember more, but they're also ready for the next statement. They'll receive so much better afterwards because they get to think about it instead of be told they're doing something wrong. I could just joke about it. And they're like, that actually makes some sense.
Yeah. It's the ultimate background of communication. I feel like stand-up comedy. If you can master that, literally any other scenario that you're going to find yourself in is going to be so much easier as a result.
Twice. This is really one time last year, I was asked to keynote. And it was an hour keynote and I got there. They're like, hey, there's some traffic issues. The other person's supposed to speak after you. I don't think they're going to make it on time. Can you do 2 hours instead of 1? I said, can I do comedy? They said, sure. So dinner, which is the worst thing to keynote, round tables, terrible to keynote. I just did tons of comedy with the content and it went pretty well. And I just acknowledge what is. It's my number one rule. There's a guy, his wife's laughing hysterically. He's not laughing. I'm like, sir, do you want to take a break? Did nobody tell you I was coming? I just acknowledge it. Or waiters are taking orders. I'm like, oh, don't worry about me. I'll just pause. You just acknowledge what is and it stays funny. So that was super helpful. Another time last year, I did this hour and 45-minute presentation. They showed my comedy trailer instead of my normal speaking trailer before I went on. So I was like, well, I better do some jokes. And the guy that's running the event this year came up. He's like, that was amazing, but they should have given you more than 20 minutes. I'm like, I did an hour and 45 minutes. But that's what comedy did, is it just made it feel like it just goes by so much faster.
Yeah, so cool. I love this whole just abundant energy that you're living with your life today, but I know it wasn't always like that. So what was the mindset of money that you grew up with in your household?
Well, so we had, the Gunderson side of the family, came from Norway, but they married my great grandma was from Ireland, and that was like Ireland. They were struggling, like not even, there's the famine, and there wasn't even enough food, and so they're coming to America just to try to make it. And on my mom's side of the family, they were Italians living in southern Italy in this little town that I went and visited a few years ago that is completely, there's not even a restaurant in it. It's just dilapidated and kind of abandoned. And so my great grandfather was separated from his wife for 7 years because they couldn't afford to bring both of them over, and she was pregnant. And so he ends up getting to the United States and becoming a goat herd, living in a tent for 7 years. So that was like passed down like folklore, that if you don't hold on to your money, you could lose it. You could be separated from your loved ones. And so it was like this scarcity mindset. They put cash in coffee cans. They put it in the cellar. Like my great aunt applied for welfare, but she had $550,000 in savings. So they obviously denied her, but she lived like poor, even though they had money, because they had the first dollar they ever earned. I swear, they just never spent money. So I came from this place of, my dad was a coal miner. My grandfathers were coal miners. My great grandfather was a coal miner, which mines go on strike. You don't know what's going to happen. And so I had a scarcity mindset where I just was like trying to squirrel away as much money as I could and not spend it. I mean, to the point where when I was 17, I had this business doing pretty well, washing and detailing cars. Very just pretty as simple as business could get. But I remember one day I was hungry and bought some $7 jerky on the side of the road. Those people that like just sitting on the side of the road selling jerky. And I thought about it for months that I wasted $7. Like, that's how indoctrinated I was. And like, hold on to what you got. It's like cellular, like this folklore passing through the family.
And when you look at, say, 20-year-olds today, do you think they have a similar scarcity mindset, or is that just so difficult than generations ago when you get things like access to credit cards and all of these distractions that we have?
They have a different mindset of entitlement. It's like we have these immigrants that came over, that were parents and grandparents that had like nothing to their name and worked and found a way, and they're resourceful, and they're like, I want my kids to live a better life. And so the kids live a little bit better life, but then by the next generation, it's just a little bit too easy. It's and that easiness starts to create like a level of judgment where they look at everything that's wrong without acknowledging what's right, and feeling like, there's a saying like, born on second base, think they hit a double. And that's kind of what happens sometimes. So I think it's a different form of scarcity. Scarcity shows up in so many different formats, but part of it just is anytime that people look to take more than they give, anytime people focus more on complaining or think that profit is evidence of deception and coercion instead of value creation, or when they come from a place of fear, doubt, and worry. Because I think that the younger generation, they're challenging certain norms, but they're also insecure about their future. So you're seeing more Marxism kind of come up because they want to be taken care of, and they don't realize how damaging that psyche is, that if we're not producing value and we don't find out the value creator that we could be, that there's no amount of money that will buy that happiness. It will rent it probably, because you can buy a car, feel really good about that car. And eventually it's like, if I'm not writing or creating or adding value or getting when I had a whole lot of real estate, I never got any letter from a tenant or a hug from a tenant. And I just had to talk to bankers and attorneys and property managers. It was not exciting for me at all. There was no fulfillment. It was purely a money grab. And then when I was like, what I really like to do? I like to be on a stage. I like to do a podcast. I like to meet new people. I like to be challenged with my thinking and increase my skills in a way that's consistent, whether it's writing or speaking, or whether it's just like, influence and connecting. And it was like I had to completely transform from what the world said was the way to build wealth to the way that I wanted to build wealth. And that just brought so much more fulfillment. And so I think that it's more like a scarcity of, they're not sure what the future looks like, and they just are really good at complaining because they're more influenced by social media and manipulated. And so it's just a different time. It's a different place. It's easier to put food on the table. I mean, a couple 100 years ago, to get enough calories in a day was a real struggle. Today, people are smoking weed, playing video games in their basement. It just shows up on DoorDash because they get a check, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it all just shows up. You don't need to do anything else.
Right.
So do you think if you had to design a curriculum for young people, would you go all in on helping them identify and develop their skills, or would you try and include a significant component of connecting with some of the eras of the past that have gone so they can have some perspective of what the world used to be like?
I like both of those things. I think that the number one thing that I want to focus on is that they have to listen to themselves a little bit. I think that we've got a little bit too much of committee consensus thinking, and we've lost some individuality in that. Like they want to have someone else tell them what's best for their life, or they want to go a different way, but they don't understand the value that they could create. And so it's more about listening to their intuition and designing a life that they don't want to retire from. I hope that younger generation just challenges this concept of retirement. I think retirement came from the industrial age where you had these people working jobs that were risky, and they're working 7 days a week. So they're dying because it's manufacturing and it's dangerous. And, you know, someone had to look out for these workers, and retirement was like, cool, if you make it to 62, you get to retire. And then everybody's average age of death was 65. Well, now it's like 87, right? So it's completely changed, but we didn't change our mindset. And I look at it like in the world, if you're a worker that uses your mind instead of your physical brawn, the older you get, as long as you have brain function, you actually probably have more wisdom and more value to give. So why would you retire from that service, from that value? If we start to find a career that's fulfilling, if we start to find work that matters, and we start to develop our skill sets, as you said, like develop those skill sets, and then recognize the patterns from the past that were actually helpful and hurtful. Because if we don't study the past, like Marxism is genocide. You look at Mao, you look at, Stalin, you look at all these, like if we don't learn from that, then we get these egalitarian ideas that actually stifle people and don't recognize that there is a different level of effort or value or contribution. If someone wants to take more time off, that's their prerogative. I'm great. They have that freedom. But if someone wants to work a little bit more or scale up or has a brilliant idea that impacts more people, I think it should be justly rewarded.
Yeah, there's a reason Elon Musk is in America.
Right. Yeah. And hopefully we can keep this place on the right track. It's sometimes we get a little bit squirrely,
For sure. And apart from that guy that sold you jerky on the side of the road, when did you begin to start rubbing shoulders with wealthy people?
It was awesome. I started in financial services in June of 1998, but I went to this thing and I just spoke at this thing. I went to it in 1995. It was called Governor's Honors Academy. I was a teenager, and they brought 50 students for 10 days to a university where they brought in scientists, they brought in politicians, but they brought in entrepreneurs. You did debates, you played like strategic games to learn how to, collaborate. You went and saw the arts, like, because there's a Shakespearean festival down there. And it forever expanded my mind. And this guy, Ren Zafiropoulos, who invented Xerox, spoke. And he was an entrepreneur. I was pretty fascinated by it. So I went up and talked to him. And he really was great with me and like talking to me and, giving me advice, because he came and had lunch with us afterwards. And then this other couple, Steve and Cindy Gilbert, they were like big donors to the university. So I went up and talked to them because we had a lunch at their house, and I stayed in touch with them. And it turned out one of them ended up being on a panel when I was presenting my business to this panel of judges, my car detailing business called Garrett Gunderson's Car Care. And so I was like, I recognized them. They recognized me. We started talking, asked questions. They're talking about, hey, if you can contribute to people, you could do internships. And so when I got in financial services in 1998, I used my young age to actually meet with people that normally it'd be hard to access because they like to pay it forward. So we had a professor that came to our school that managed $5 billion in municipal bond funds, and then decided he was going to dedicate his next 25 years to service because he had made the money he needed to provide for his family. And when he came to the school, I just befriended him. I was a senator for that school of business and took him out and played racquetball, went and lifted weights. And then he took me out for lunch afterwards, and I just asked him questions. He became a client. We still keep in touch to this day. We've done fundraisers for the school and all this kind of stuff. So like, I just realized when I was young, you could talk to almost anyone if you're willing to be inquisitive and you're willing to offer value.
And did you realize your own value in that process? Was there like a direct correlation between the number of people you could connect with and they would transfer their self-belief in you? And as you got smarter, you realized that you had more value to offer other people?
I think that I'll give like a 2-3 minute answer on this because I think it's worth looking at two factions of this. I had a neighbor, Anime Webb, who just unconditionally loved me when I was a little kid. My parents poured in this belief of you could do anything, put your mind to it, and we'll support you. You're never stepping foot in a coal mine. I had a grandfather who poured into me, who, even though he's a coal miner, he had 2 side jobs that were both entrepreneurial: TV repairman and played the accordion like a true Italian, right? In bands every weekend. And I saw his level of connection in the community. And so I just had these, even this teacher, Terry Tubbs, really poured into me when I was a teenager with the business that got me in the business competitions. So that was really helpful for my confidence. Like, just that these people really cared about me and like, you know, poured into me. So it gave me this belief. But there was an attorney. So when I was still in college, a senior in college, I met someone. They're like, you really know this financial stuff. You should come speak to my agency. Like, so it's I'm the youngest guy that walks in the room. There's 50 people in the room. I remember I fell asleep in a book studying because I was book smart about finance because I was really trying to figure it out. And what happened is my first 2 years, I didn't know what I was doing. I was regurgitating stuff, and I put people in the stock market because it was 1998, 1999. It just went up. And then in the year 2000, it started to go down. That's when I went to my professor and I started to really learn. And I got all my clients but one out of the market by May of 2000, which the market went down for 2.5 more years. So it was really hard for a young, arrogant kid to admit he didn't know what the hell he was talking about, but it saved them a whole bunch of money. And when I gave this speech, 2 guys came up to me, Rick and Gerald. I remember they're like, Rick's like, my dad's selling his business. And I think this charitable trust strategy you're talking about, which, mind you, I'd only read in a book. I'd only read in an article. I think this is a good strategy. Do you think you can help my dad with it? I was like, sure. So we schedule with his dad. I tell him, he's like, this is great. Let's go meet with our attorney. So I'm now in an attorney's office at 21 years old, sitting there, like going to tell this attorney, we should do a charitable trust. It'll save him a couple $100,000 of tax, and he can do it for this thing that he really likes. And I've already, talked to them, and they're open to it. They'll cover the cost because, it's a 501c3. And he's like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, and I didn't really. He was kind of right. But what I did was I called the guy that wrote the article, this guy, Greg Barrick. I just called his office. I said, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I read this article. I thought it was awesome. I don't know if there's any way Greg would talk to me. And he got on the phone with me. And he says, you're 21 and you're making this call? I said, yeah. He goes, I love that. Why don't you come to the office? Why don't you come meet with me? Turns out this guy was working on Walt Disney's estate when he died. He was working on Frank Sinatra's estate, like really part of this pretty magical team. And I said, I thought we could do this. And yeah, we could do that. I'm like, so you meet with this client? He's like, sure. So we do the transaction, save him hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Greg the whole time was like, I just love that you're going to be a superstar in this business. Like, you ask the right questions. You call me, like, I'm here for you. And he just really made me feel so much better as a young kid after just getting slammed by this attorney and feeling like garbage.
You can see some of the characteristics there in you from an early age, like resourcefulness, resilience, relationships, the will to win. This is the stuff that people want to hire, that they have a hard time trying to determine all that during job interviews. But you had that from such a young age, which has obviously contributed to so much success. And actually, I think it might be good timing now to give us a bit of an overview of what was the problem that you saw in the world when you decided to go all in on this personal finance mission of yours.
I experienced it the first 2 years. One, I got to give it up to my really good friend that was my roommate. His name's Matt. He's a dentist now. And, his dad became a client and his, sister became a client. And I would subscribe as a 19-year-old. By the way, I bought a house when I was 19 with this thing called a champ loan. No down payment. Got a townhome, rented out to my college roommates. And I was a terrible landlord. I'd put alarms under their bed if they didn't pay on time, but
That's a great landlord.
We played fun. It was fun. And, and he saw that I left out the Wall Street Journal, and there was this thing in the Wall Street Journal talking about how they took monkeys, had them throw darts at a stock board. And he's like, do you think the monkeys are beating you? And the reality was they were beating like a bunch of the fund managers because it was just such a time that all the market was going up. And so he's like, it had me think, though, like haunted me, because I started looking at that segment all the time. And his dad was one of those guys, like the millionaire next door kind of guys. Like, you went to his house, it was kind of dumpy, but he'd open the drawer when I would meet with him, and there was just stacks of uncashed checks. 30 grand. So he like just took one of them. He's like, I'll deposit this and I'll invest with you. And I remember like when the market started going down, his dad was the only client that didn't move his money out. Everybody else did. And it was from this guy, Steve Harrop, that was mentoring me. And that's when my real education began, when the market went down, because I had family that cashed in their double E bonds that were super safe, put it in the market. And for the first 2 years, they're like, oh, look at this little financial Einstein. You know, I didn't know anything. I just regurgitated stuff. I tried to sound smart. I tried to confuse them with jargon because I was insecure. And so now when the market started going down, I went to Steve. I was like, I don't know what to do. He goes, that's what you tell him. I don't know what I'm doing. And he had donated $250,000 to our class to actually really manage. And you got graded based upon how you did against the markets. And so I started to see like there was way more dynamics because he'd show us financial sheets. And I was like, this isn't even what I want to do. Like, this isn't even the important stuff. So I went to New York and saw Family Office for the first time, which was kind of coined by the Rockefellers. It's like they were so wealthy, they had their own financial team just for their family, right? Their own attorneys, accountants, investment advisors, risk management people. And I saw that at 21 and was like, what is this? And the guy that let me in, who, by the way, I just saw at an event and he's going to probably license my content, which is insane. Like, this guy that mentored me so long ago, like, respects it at that level. It's like just mind blowing because I was annoying as hell to him. Most people liked the questions when I was young. He always was like glasses at the nose. And he asked me just last week, he goes, was I nice to you? I'm like, overall, yes, but twice you were just like so annoyed by me. You let out a sigh. But I saw this family office and I asked him, I was like, so what's this family office? Because the client wasn't even in the room. He goes, well, this is a small time one, like $30 million and up. 30 million and up. And I was like, I got to build this for like the masses. And what I learned in that meeting was these guys were masters of efficiency. They weren't getting their clients to take risks. They're saying, can we save tax? Can we save interest? Can we find any non-performing fees and remove them? Can we find a different design or structure so we can transfer risk and mitigate the downside? And I was like, that was when it all began for me. And that, as soon as I saw that, I made a commitment. Every month I'm flying somewhere to either interview a bright mind or go to an event so I could really figure out this financial game and be an efficiency expert. And so that was like, that was like a big pivotal moment for me.
It's interesting when you look at people, even in highly skilled professions, how disengaged your average person is from their personal finance, from their own financial situation.
I think it's because, first off, we've been taught not to talk about it. And so I think that people have like this money story, but there's really 3 layers and they only let you in on the first layer. And for some, we both know these people, they exaggerate that layer, right? So that they want you to think they're bigger than they are. And I think that's a lot of pressure on them because when you live in pretense, it's never very fun. Then there's the people that are just like protective and they don't want anyone to know and they try to be as secretive as possible because they might be embarrassed about where they're at or they feel guilt or shame because of the mistakes. And everybody makes financial mistakes. I don't know about, I've made several financial mistakes. We can go back to 2008 and be like, what were you thinking? You should have known better. I had just written the book on it and then went through the very experience myself. I was like, I should have read my own writing, but now I understand it. I've just had, financial mistakes and a lot of times we kind of shy away from that because people love to talk about their wins in finance, but don't always talk about how they became a winner in finance. And the way we become a winner is we course correct and learn our lessons and develop our philosophies and principles. And when people don't, then they make the same mistake over and over again, and it becomes a hell. And they're isolated in it because they feel like they should keep it secretive. And so when we isolate, we make bad decisions in finance, just because there's too much to know. But that second layer is what people won't share. And what they won't share is what's the internal dialogue already in their head. It's negativity, it's comparison, it's guilt and shame, it's all those factors, which has them feel a sense of heaviness and they don't feel that freedom. And it becomes like it consumes their mind instead of being really creative. And underneath all that is this sludge that we get when we're kids, like bad experiences, hearing stories, that person's wealthy, they're bad, whatever those stories are, we start to develop that. And it's a weird place to be if people think money's the root of all evil, but they want more of it. There's no peace in that, so they've got to get to where that bottom is of what they can't share. But the only way you get there is when you share what you won't in a safe space. And I don't think we have enough financial community. We have communities for entrepreneurs. We have, tons of communities. Like now that there's internet, there's community for everything, right? If you like, I mean, now there's Comic-Con. If you like comic, there's huge things. You like Legos, there's massive things. Like it's easy to find, but in finance, it's still this secretive thing. And so I think if we could start opening up about it in a safe space, we could start to heal our woes and wounds around money, and start to release these limiting stories and instead create something much more profound and better.
Yeah, so true. In episode 200, we had Graham Weaver on the show, who runs Alpine Investors' $15 billion private equity fund. And when he was in his early days, on 3 occasions, he'd emailed his investors to say it is mathematically impossible for them to lose money on this investment. And of course, in those 3, they went on to lose money. And a huge correlation about the work that you do and what I do with Win the Day is that it's the difference in mindset going away from trying not to lose to instead focus on winning. So can you dive a little bit more into that concept?
Yeah, so playing not to lose is what I grew up with, right? Hold on to what you can. You never want it's going to go away. And playing to lose is a losing game. Playing not to lose, We've seen it in sports. You watch the prevent defense and you're like, oh, they're just going to march down the field. You just abandon everything because you're afraid, and that fear kind of comes about. Now, there's also play to win, which is more productive, but it's still always about the future, never enjoying the present, still a form of scarcity. My belief is, when you win the day, when you go, I'm designing my day, I'm designing my life. I'm going to create the life I don't want to retire from. I'm going to create the life that I love. I'm going to do less of the things that I don't love and do more of the things that I love. Then you already won. Like when you can find the win in the work, not just the outcome. That's, in my mind, part of how you win the day and how you win the game of life is if I love what I do, it doesn't mean that I get to do that all the time. I'm just doing it far more often than I'm doing the things that I don't love that sometimes are required ingredients to do that. And when I've designed that in a way that I want to keep doing that day in and day out, I've already won. I've already won the game. I've won first, and now I'm playing because I designed the rules, I designed the game, and I'm playing it out. And my wife once was being interviewed for a video I was doing, and my youngest was 7 at the time. She says, well, when we got married, there really wasn't a job for Garrett, so he just invented one. My youngest was like, what do you mean Dad invented it? Well, he's an entrepreneur. He just created what he wanted. And my 7-year-old was like, well, I think I want to do that. It was also kind of cool because when they interviewed my 7-year-old, they're like, tell me about your dad. He goes, well, he doesn't work too much, but he doesn't not work too much. And I thought that was like, that's the definition of winning, right?
Yeah.
His son's like, hey, he works and I like seeing there's a work ethic, but he's there for me too. And this morning I was driving them to the airport and we just had this most profound conversation. I was like, I won the day. Like we won to start the day because we had this amazing connected conversation. So I think that scarcity is the greatest destroyer of wealth. And when we come from abundance, we can design a much better life. And then we live it out day to day. And the win is in the work. The win's in the work that we're choosing to do.
We'll be back with the show shortly. I've got a quick question for you. Are you living up to your potential? It's a question that shapes your family, your business, and your overall happiness every single day. That's why I'm excited to introduce the Win the Day quiz. Head over to winthedayquiz.com right now, answer a few thought-provoking questions, and you'll instantly discover how well you're performing relative to your true potential. And here's the exciting part for our Win the Day family. As a fan of the show, you'll receive a personalized and absolutely free action plan to help you win the day every day. Now, just imagine how transformational the results will be when you consistently show up as the best version of yourself in every aspect of your life. Don't miss out. Take the Win the Day quiz now by visiting winthedayquiz.com or click the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the show. For someone who's in the midst of scarcity, maybe it's the limiting beliefs that they grow up with that programming. Maybe they've got a lot of credit card debt, a big mortgage, and they're in a job that they hate. How does someone connect with that abundant energy to be able to build that life, and then when they get there, not fall victim to the trappings of wealth like material possessions and always wanting more?
Yeah. Consumerism is such a detriment. The 2 ways I like to handle it myself is I'll have days that I don't feel as good. I got some blood work last week and it really bothered me. It just wasn't as like I'm eating well, I'm working out, I'm sleeping, I feel amazing. My blood work. And so like what I did was rather than getting to scarcity, which would have been isolation, I just immediately called my doctor, who I really trust, and she talked me through it. She's like, this is why this number's this way. We expected this, and it's now the next phase. You're not eating enough fat, so your liver's holding on to this, and it's making your kidneys work. And I was like, Okay. And I'm like, then what's next? She's like, I'm sending you the food list. We're going to adjust the food list. Like, I felt so much better because I didn't like hold it in. I called. So if I'm feeling scarcity in another way, maybe just not feeling valuable enough that day, maybe I just didn't sleep enough, I don't know, whatever reason I'm a little bit insane, I'll call someone that I consider a peer or mentor and just tell them, I'm feeling a little bit off my game right now. And then they'll ask me a question, or they'll give me an insight, or they'll support me and acknowledge something. Or I'll just call someone I know I can add massive value to. And rather than complaining to them about how I woke up and felt, I just ask them questions and find a way to connect them to an idea or a person or add value. And then what they do is they appreciate me, and it helps me. Appreciation is like rising above. And other times I'll just write. I'll just take the time to write so I can cultivate the lesson and be okay that I felt an emotion, but not that the emotion diminish who I am or define my life. I think sometimes we suppress those things far too often and they start to haunt us in difficult times. But I'll literally go through a process where I'm like, what am I protecting, defending, or trying to control? And I'll write about that. It helps me think, what am I hating or shunning or judging? And I realize if it's something that's I'm projecting, but it's really about me, I'll write, like hand write in my little remarkable. And I'll say, can I accept that? Can I forgive that? Can I even love that? And that writing process helps me process that emotion. So either call a peer or mentor, call someone else I can add value to, or write about it in my 3 ways. And the way I really got out of scarcity was just being honest enough with someone after I got an award as a kid, feeling amazing. And she's like, I can't wait till you get to this next level and you see how people treat money and view money. And I was like, what do you mean? I just got this award. She's like, well, let me ask you some questions. And I honestly answered them. And the way I answered them, she goes, I wonder what it's like living in the prison you built for your wife, the financial prison you built for your wife. And I was like, oh, damn. I realized like how constrained and scarcity and play not to lose had like impacted like the house we lived in, when we could have kids, how much savings I thought we needed to have before we felt safe. And I was just not hearing her, not listening to her, and pushing it way down the road. And it was crazy because within a month we'd bought a house that we loved. And it wasn't even 1 times what my income was at the time. So it was very within range. And then my income increased because I was just thinking more abundantly, not about what I could preserve, but how I could serve, not about reduction, but production. It was like a shift when she just called me out and I was like, wait, such a blind spot until she said something.
And speaking of that, there's a quote from your book that I love. You said, one of the best investments for me has always been in my businesses and scaling that revenue. When we use the word scale, most people think of scaling up, but you might want to scale down because scaling up may mean losing what your business stood for in the first place. And I know you went on to sell your company. So can you tell us a little bit about that sort of philosophy and what decisions that led to?
That line is written from me scaling a business up to a point where I no longer recognized that business and why I wanted to be part of it. It had lost sight of the values that we started with. And it was more about adding more clients than me feeling connected to them. We had this program I love called the Freedom Fast Track. We could never get more than 100 to 105 people in it because as soon as we did, it just started to diminish the results because it taxed our attorneys and the accountants and the investment. But they only could work with so many people, and we had to have really good coaches with it. But I always felt confident in it. I always felt like if someone was in it and they saw me, they're like, oh man, your program changed my life. So we created these programs that were more scalable, but less accountability, less hand-holding, less support. And so people were getting in the program, but they weren't getting the same results. And because I was a team player, I didn't call it out soon enough, and it kind of got away from me. And so I gave it 2 years trying to fix it, and was finally like, I just don't share the same values as one of the partners. So, and I said, we're either all going to collaborate and get along because that's what I teach, or else I'm out. And so I sold. I sold disenchanted, but at the same time, I knew I needed to do something different, and that led to me doing a comedy special as a little, have a little bit of fun before I was, doing the next thing. But that scaling, sometimes we become corporate if we grow too big. And I challenge that the real purpose of business is to add value, which leads to profit, not profit at the expense of value. And I felt like that's where we got, where it was, how do we get more people in versus how do we give more value? Because in the world of impact, you can either reach more people or more deeply impact those people, or have a combination of both. And I felt like it was getting tipped into reaching more people and delivering less value. And now I was just talking to a computer screen, not a person. And it like felt robotic, and it's my fault that it got there because I was people pleasing, because I didn't speak up soon enough, because I was like, well, I'm in Italy and I'm letting the team grow up. But yeah, they can grow up with some boundaries, with some reminder of values, with me saying I'm the majority owner and I don't want to do it that way because this is what I lose and this is who I am. And so for me, I then sold the business and was like, I'm going to just do 24 one-on-ones this next year. And it wasn't really scalable other than I have everyone's number. I know what they're doing. I had someone on Saturday that I saw one-on-one that he's worked with me last year. He said, I don't know how to repay you because he's going through something, and he's willing to share the whole thing with me. Other ways it wasn't going that way. So now I'm recreating, going, what are my values? How do I want to do this? And will it infringe upon my daily win? Will it infringe upon me living the life that I love? And will I feel connected to it? And so I don't want to just do something because it's working for someone else. I want to do something because it's who I am and congruent with that. And I just think that we're addicted to growth in this country at all costs sometimes, and sometimes the cost is too great.
And along that theme of lifestyle design, obviously a big part of that is getting clear on the values that you inherently have and that drive you, as well as where you want to go, like what type of outcomes and experiences do you want in your life. For someone who comes to you and says, yes, all the stuff you say is amazing, but I just don't know who I am and where I want to go, what type of sort of process would you run them through? Or are there any specific questions that you would ask them?
Yeah, I mean, I love that question because one, I can't just tell them what to do. So it is, you nailed it. It is the questions. So this has been my formula. Because some people, like, there's probably a few thousand books about values out there. But I'm really clear about when someone comes in as a one-on-one, what my values are in that one-on-one. Vulnerability. And I got to lead with it. Because they might have read my stuff and positioned me too high, which then makes them think they're not capable. And it gives them permission. Number two, I want a safe space. So we go to my lodge. It's just like, I call it a cabin, but it's more than a cabin. We call it Cash Cabin. It's on a river. There's beautiful aspen trees. It's in nature, but it's like got all the right amenities. So they come to my favorite place in the world. So we have a safe space. We start to build trust because we just get to know each other as two humans, or maybe it's a husband and wife, or a spouse. And so there's three of us, but then we can get to this place called intimacy. And intimacy is where you're just present with someone and they feel completely safe to share exactly what's going on without trying to get somewhere or without worried about how it sounds. And we sometimes only reserve that word for like love making instead of like just being together as humans. And then that's where the breakthrough exists. So those are really the values. And if I can get them to that place and now they're sharing stuff they haven't otherwise shared, I just have to listen and let them know it's okay. Like, let them know, thank you for sharing and I love you. And sometimes it's really heavy, harsh stuff. And I'm not a therapist and I don't have any licenses. What I know is by them sharing, if they've never shared it before, they start to feel lighter. And then I can guide them to people that are really good at these things that I know very little about, but I've gotten huge results from. Like Disrupting Sacred Cows, that book has 3 pages of resources and references to people that can actually help people redesign their money map because of things that happened in their childhood. I'm not the expert at that. I think it would take a lot more dedication. I mean, what I'm good as a catalyst. I can open up that door and then connect them to the right person. And so getting them out of their element, no phones, like feeling really comfortable, and then asking them the questions that they have an answer within, but they've never asked themselves. I really think that that's the objective. And then just like, you're such a good listener, like I just listen. And when people feel seen and heard, they heal. That's the thing. And it's just like, that's it.
And that's when you can initiate conversations that need to be had, where you can just unburden yourself. And it's in a spot where there is no judgment and criticism there because the other person is ready to receive.
And it's so freeing for them because we're so used to having judgment and criticism that we're like, what are they going to think if I share this? But the irony is I feel so connected to them and they feel so connected to me.
So you become a marriage therapist as well halfway through these. It'd be hard not to, right? Like in all these different...
Well, it's crazy because, in 7 years into my marriage, we have 2 young kids. I'm trying to get lift off with my first book. There's an economic meltdown happening that is a housing crisis and a lending crisis, like unprecedented. And I'm just trying to make it work. Like I'm struggling and I'm hardly emotionally available for my wife. And our oldest son was struggling. And we got to a place where like there was some numbness, like where she didn't know if I was going to be there for the family because I'm out trying to make a business work. So she's feeling like a very far second or third priority. And I'm just trying to make sure that we don't lose our house and I don't declare bankruptcy because I've overextended myself in real estate. And we figured a way through it. I was like, all right, I've got to read books around this. I've got to hire a mentor around this. I've got to open up and speak about it. I've got to go to my friends that have had tough times in finance, but they have a great marriage and they've been married longer than us. And I would interview them and I'd say, what are your best practices? And what did you learn? And she would interview the wives because she could listen to them where she couldn't listen to me. It's like, I think we should put each other first. She's like, why? And, they're like, no, you got to try it on for 30 days. And they're like, you need some support because like even a part-time someone that can help so that you have some time to yourself and that Garrett can, go on a trip and speak. And so like they gave us all this really great wisdom. And so we decided to kind of try it on and do like a second honeymoon after like we had these 3 couples that we all met in Chicago. They told us about all these best practices. Had my buddy Sean, who was like a PhD in like, marriage therapy, give a little talk, and we kind of recommitted. And it was up and down, but it was like, I was like, this is the investment worth doing. And then I just created like a format. Hey, I got to have a vision for my marriage. We got to have, if I'm gone for 4 days in a month, I take a day off during the week. 14 days away from the kids because they were super young. So it's like, we need to have our time for romance. I'm like, we're going to start doing weekly date nights. We're going to do a weekly meeting. I'm going to check in how I'm doing on a scale of 1 to 10. We're going to do quarterly. So we created this format and I actually shared it in an entrepreneurial group. And all of a sudden like, hey, will you speak on marriage? I'm like, it was a 15-minute talk. So I remember giving that talk and Jay Abraham came up and goes, hey man, that was an amazing talk. Like we want to hire you. I'm like, well, you don't need to because I gave you all I know in 15 minutes. It's all there is. This isn't my world. I just happen to be sharing it. It was working really well because entrepreneurs could make sense of having a vision and having values and doing weekly meetings and doing check-ins and getting feedback. It was like, it spoke the language. And we had this coach, Dino from Business of Marriage, that helped me integrate it. And it was the hardest thing we've done, but the most rewarding thing we've done. Like in business, I don't take someone could say whatever on social media. It just doesn't bother me. I don't take it personal. But in my marriage, I take things very personal and I want to always work out and I want to do all the right things. And I don't always do that. So that was a instrumental part of life. And it did help that I'm not really a marriage therapist, but I can at least relate to certain things and say, well, here's some things to try on, afterwards. And maybe they go see a real therapist too.
I think that's awesome. What about now that your kids are a bit older? Is there anything about running the household which has made a lot in terms of increasing you and your wife's energy or just general harmony around the house?
My wife this is her brilliant. This is like her gift. Everything in her life is like, how do we make things more inclusive and comfortable? So soft blankets, rooms with a view, get rid of the things that have too harsh of edges so it feels very welcoming. Like she wanted our home to feel like you're coming into a spa. And so it does. And so it's like our favorite place to go to, that or the cabin. And so, she's always looking for ways to get the kids to come sit down or like, hey, dad is making coffee. And my 19-year-old still lives at our house and he's doing all my video work right now, which gives us like this really cool relationship where we have ideation and he's just really good with filming and he does good with editing. And I don't know, that's his like real future, but right now it just gives us this really nice connection. And my 16-year-old, we had the most brilliant conversation this morning. It's a little harder. He's 16. He's got his friends. I'm not as cool as I used to be. I used to be so cool, and now I'm not so cool, But this morning we had these really deep conversations because we're in LA. It takes a long time to get to the airport, no matter where you start. So, that's a really great thing. I thought the cabin would be cooler for the kids, but they like their friends and their friends, at home. And so we haven't been able to make that as extraordinary as I wanted to, although there are 2 things that we've done that are absolutely the coolest things for our kids. One is called Christmas roast. So in any legacy, you'll find 3 commonalities. It's the same in religion or even in a great organization: rituals, traditions, and symbols. Every business has a logo, right? Every church has a logo. And families that actually design, we have a family crest. And when there's symbols that the family can reference, it's very meaningful. So we created this tradition called Christmas Roast where we draw names and then you get to roast that person and you draw their name. Now we cheat on whose name we draw based upon what the joke, but like it might be a video that we do. It might be literally just getting up and doing a rap or a song or like a play. And our kids will abandon their friends to be at the Christmas roast. And now they get to roast each other as kids too. And nobody's got their feelings hurt other than my parents, who were laughing so hard and we filmed it that they thought they looked stupid because they were crying while they were laughing. But the Christmas roast, and what we're starting this summer, is the Summer Olympics. So you get to pick everybody in the family gets to pick whatever game they want. Could be like playing basketball if that's really what you want, but it could be cornhole, it could be shooting arrows. I mean, whatever you want. Like my wife's game is you get rubber chickens and you flip them up through the upright in this, like in the cabin, right? So we have these little rubber chickens everywhere, but the winner gets the dumbest green jacket that I won when I was a life insurance salesman at 24 that's oversized with shoulder pads, supposed to be like a master's jacket. And then they can take pictures at different places they shouldn't be wearing it, right? And send it to the family. So we're creating this like this connection that we could go to the cabin and do these fun things and just have a good time, because we have had those like card games at the cabin that are great, or those board games. We've had Relative Insanity is so inappropriate for young kids, or, you know, once we played Cards Against Humanity, my dad was like, we cannot have my grandkids listening to this conversation. But we have those hysterical moments of just laughing and laughing. And that's the thing that my family is awesome about, is laughter. Like from the time I was 5, that's why I love comedy. My uncles were hilarious. My dad is hilarious. My mom has an infectious laugh. And both sides, even though one side was Catholic, staunch, go to church every day. The other side was Mormon, you know, great-great-great-grandfather was president of that church. Like, so like pretty religious, but I could swear at 5 if it was the right joke, you know, then it was okay.
I love this idea of like play is the language of children. I heard that once and I never forgot it. And you being able to create that is such a good thing.
My mantra is we win when we play.
Yeah, nice. I love that. How do you feel about things like pocket money for kids, and how do we educate kids on personal finance? Or is it just something that they have to experience the path of going wrong?
I love the app Gravy Stack and Dinner Table. You know, Scott Donnell was kind of the one that initiated that. I think that they're doing a really good job. I think that my children's book has been instrumental. It's been amazing because it just gives the questions, because parents aren't perfect with money. But what if they were just given good questions to have a conversation? Then you don't have to just let them watch your behavior, because you might have some bad and good behavior. Just having that conversation is helpful. So I just knew that my children's book will get read 100 times more than my other books, because children's books get read over and over. Yeah. Where a nonfiction book, if someone reads it cover to cover, it's pretty, you know, it's like, that's a small percentage. So I'm always working on that. I like the thought of just having the conversations with my kids when they're ready for it and they're asking about it. Early on, being in the space that I was in, I could just see them roll their eyes like, oh, Dad's going to tell us about this, you know, and we're driving the cabin and they're held captive. So when we started going on trips, they started asking me about it. And that's when I would really dive in with them. Really tried to work on having them bid jobs. Like, there's jobs around the house. There's tons of value to be had. Why don't you come and bid jobs? And I wrote jokes about it, because some of their early bids when they were really young, they're like, Dad, I'll take out the garbage for $40. $40? Watch this. And just take it out in front of them, being like, look at all the money I'm saving. Do better. Then one day they're like, $20, I'll rake all the leaves. Sweet. Done. They knew immediately, wait, I've underbid myself terribly, you know, but they learned through that. Now they're vicious. Like my son's raking the leaves, pissed off. He's only getting $20. He's like, Dad, and I'm in the gym. I'm in the garage and we have a gym out there. And he's like, is Aaron younger than you? I'm like, yeah, why? He's like, probably explains why he's out lifting you. Like, oh, I see how it is. You underbid yourself, and now you're going to attack me. Aaron's laughing until he's driving to drop the bags off with him at the dump, and he's like, Aaron, do you have a dog because you don't have a wife? I'm like, oh, how does it feel now, huh? But I mean, that's I liked having them go through. They had to invoice. They had to, like right now, my son still has to invoice on the bonuses. He gets his salary. But then when he does comedy videos, he gets paid per second of edit a bonus. And so I like that they just have to like think about upside potential and thinking with their mind versus just labor.
Yeah, you have a business. My God, you learn so much more than you actually did at university. It's insane. I think I learned more in 3 months of having my own first business than I did from every other degree I had.
The stakes are high.
Yes, exactly.
Like, cool. This is not just pretend. And I have a friend, Rich Christensen. He wrote a bunch of books, Bootstrap Business, Zigzag Principle, Toes Turn Purple. Like, he made sure every one of his kids started a business when they were 14 years old, and he became their business coach. 2 of his kids, before they turned 18, had $1 million in revenue. I mean, I'm always like, that's pretty amazing. So I've really encouraged my kids on this business front. I haven't done nearly the job that Rich has done, but like I'm always getting them to think about upside potential and what ideas they could have. And hey, we read this book, my wife and I, when we first had kids, called Love and Logic. It said, its philosophy was, have your kids learn the consequence while it's small. Like, like lose $5, which is a lot of money to them, versus 500 or 5,000 or 50,000 or 500,000 when they're older, because they didn't learn the lesson. So I'm always trying to like, let's learn through experience while you're young, so you don't learn through experience when the stakes are too high. Yeah,
it's like the best of both worlds. You're giving them the values and the principles so they're ready, but also, some people take longer to bloom, just to figure out who they are and what their place in the world is.
Yeah, like my 19-year-old really had auditory processing issues and struggled. And like now, just seeing where he's at, he's so reliable. He's so good at what he does. He's so coachable. And it just took a long time for him to get there. But he's just like, he's getting up in the morning and reading a little bit in a book, doing some meditation, playing the piano. He used to do the cold plunge. He says cold shower now. I don't blame him. And then he works out with me 4 days a week. So it's like really awesome to watch these habits show up. Because at one time he just was not healthy enough to do these things, and we really invested in him. It's just really cool to see him growing. Yeah,
to understand that link between effort and growth, I feel like is so important. And we put a big emphasis on people of like, what do you want to be when you're older? But until you've experienced it, like trying your favorite ice cream flavor, you've got to go and try a whole bunch of different things before you know what's right for you. And in your work, you talk about that idea of that sort of you possess somewhat superpower. Superpowers once you find something that you're uniquely qualified to do and that you're really passionate about, that aligns with your values. Once the person can do that, they might be 18 when they find it, they might be 35 when they find it, but when they do, bang, they're exponential growth from there.
I watched it happen. Like when my son turned 18, music just became something that was so fascinating to him. So he started in Ableton, started writing songs, and it was like, we didn't have to manage it. He just show us his songs all the time. My 16-year-old has just fell in love with golf. I can't keep him off a golf course, right? But it's like, I love it. Like, I'm not having to motivate them because they found that internal motivation or what they enjoy. And so I just encourage it. Like when I'm talking to my youngest, I'm just telling him all the time, like, man, how'd you do with golf? What's going good? Like, I love to see you out there. Like, I'm just really encouraging because I know he loves it. He's like, I hate golf, but now I'm considering to golf again. I retired in 2005 because I took my dad to Scotland. And I played the King's Course, which was going to be later on, the Ryder Cup was going to be there. And what I realized is I'm not capable of playing that type of a course. I was so bad. Like on the 10th hole, I turned to the caddy. I go, what club should I use? He goes, I think any will do. And I'm like, the putter? He's like, couldn't be worse than the last hole. And I'm like, I was like, I should retire from the game. But, for my kids, I'd probably come out of retirement and I just don't like not being good at something. And what it would take to be good is beyond what I'm willing to do. So I'm just going to have to reframe it as time with my son.
Yeah, secretly take lessons for 5 years and then just smoke them on the golf course.
Like when we played basketball, I would always play so hardcore. And, there were so many days of tears. But there's also the day where I hit my elbow on concrete and we have these family guidance rules. And one of them is, we don't quit. And I was going to walk in the house. He goes, I thought we don't quit. Like, damn, I have to play with an injured arm because of these rules that I put up there that they're listening to now.
How can someone turn the financial freedom they've attained into real generational wealth? And how do they ensure those values then get passed down to their kids?
The Rockefellers led the way on this because the Vanderbilts destroyed wealth faster than any family with that amount of wealth. They had more money than the U.S. Treasury. Cornelius dies, his eldest son doubles the estate in 9 years, but then after he dies, it takes 54 years before the first Vanderbilt dies broke. And they own 10 mansions in New York. Those are gone, not in their not in their family anymore. They own the Breakers in Rhode Island. That's not owned by them anymore. The Vanderbilt University, they just donated $1 million. I mean, so yes, it's got their name on it, but it wasn't that big of a, donation compared to what they were worth. Where the Rockefellers are on their 6th generation of wealth, and everybody that partnered with Rockefellers on the 6th generation of wealth. And it came down to just a few things. Family retreat, just investing in your heirs, rituals, traditions, and symbols. Like David Rockefeller talked about how he didn't even know that his family was wealthy when he was really young until the students told him, because they kind of kept that from him because they wanted him to figure out how to earn it and have some motivation. And then he was invited when he was older to the family retreats, which they were doing quarterly. And so there's like this conversation, because wealth is built through committed conversation. And the second thing is a family constitution, which is just outlining what are your signposts you want to leave for future generations. What are the philosophies, so that there's certain signposts and there's certain guardrails and there's certain ideas that you could say, let's not make every mistake again. Because the problem is if those aren't captured, the next generation just keeps making the mistakes. So that becomes a preamble to someone's trust. And this is a big thing, having a trust, a family trust that you put your assets in so it spells out what happens when you die. Most people just do the divide, destroy, and distribute. They just say at 30, 35, and 40, you get the money. And maybe that person's going through a divorce, or they're going through a lawsuit, or they're just not engaged in life. I've seen people with a lot of money and no purpose because they inherit it be really miserable because they just don't know what to do but spend. So I don't want my kids to get inheritance. I want them to have access to capital that they don't have to use a banking system, but it's got to be inside of a trust with some established rules, because it'll protect it from taxes, but it'll also outline like for what reasons they could borrow, and they could use the family constitution to train the people that are allocating the money on what to do in a more dynamic way. And so a trust, family constitution, a family retreat structure, and finally life insurance. They just use life insurance so they could pass that money on tax-free, and that kind of buffers if taxes are higher than they expect. Like, think about it. In the last few years, inflation's been so high, it's just confiscated a lot of wealth from certain people. That insurance could kind of replenish what inflation did in the damage, and then when interest rates aren't cooperative. So it's really insurance and trust that make the big difference, but it's the conversations and it's the passing down values to the next generation. So they're not entitled, but they get a heritage, not just an inheritance. They know the stories of the family. They learn resilience. They learn resourcefulness. They learn those things that you were really pointing out in this conversation, because if someone inherits a bunch of money and they haven't earned it and they haven't been talked to about it, it's like getting under a 405-pound weight rack and trying to squat when it's the first time you're in the gym. It is going to cripple you. You've got to build up the strength over time. And that comes through conversations and retreats and practice of starting a business, making some mistakes. Like you said, starting a business that first 3 months, couldn't learn that in 4 years of education, because it's like you're in the trenches.
Especially when you have a professor who hasn't started a business as well, like a lot of them haven't.
I got in trouble because I went to I donated, I went to a small school. So when I make donations there, it's a big deal. If it was another school, it wouldn't matter. But, I donated like an investment lab, and I donated for the Goo Goo Dolls to come perform, and it's small amounts of money, but for them, it was big amounts of money. So they always would have me come and speak. And I remember the first time I spoke there, they told me, they go, well, this is like 10 classes coming into the auditorium. Some have to go to other classes and stuff because the way that the breakdown works, so you might get people to get up and leave. So I just opened the speech going, there's nothing in that classroom that's going to change your life. There's probably something I'm going to say that's going to make you completely think differently about what happens after college. I'm like, number 2, what I'm about to say, you get in trouble for in school, but in business, what they call plagiarism in school, they call delegation in, or they call cheating in school, they call delegation here. What they call plagiarism, you call just good models in business. I was like, so you got to unlearn some of these things. And I remember the dean coming to me, he's like, Hamlin's not very happy. And his professor, he's like, nobody came to his class. I'm like, yeah, Hamlin was a dick anyway,
What about as well when the national debt's at something like $35 trillion? Yeah. How do we educate people on responsible spending and earning when we have that?
I mean, actually, RFK probably has the best idea of the presidential candidates talking about transparency on the blockchain. The problem with our money supply is it's central banking. It's all in a closed system. So we don't really know what's happening. we hear about terms like, oh, there's quantitative easing. What does that mean? And people think, oh, it's printing money. No. There's no money printed. They just add it to a balance sheet. They just send it onto someone's balance sheet. Then quantitative tightening, they pull it back. And they're like, why did these banks go under? Well, because we've been tinkering with interest rates with the money that we just handed out. So the wolf is in the sheep's den saying what to do. And that's part of the problem. So we have to be a lot more transparent. Where's the money going? What's it being spent on? And why are we spending that? We have so much corruption. Everybody knows there's backroom deals and that we're scratching one person's back for the next. And so with transparency and accountability, we can start to slow that down. Will there still be some, issues? Yes, but like we have to stop the notion of thinking it's the government's job to create jobs. We need to just empower private citizens to create jobs. Why do we have so many tax incentives for real estate investors? Why do we have so many tax incentives for that? Is because government's not good at providing housing. So they're incentivizing through tax for people to go build developments, right? So let government do the things that government is supposed to do, which is protect our unalienable rights. And, and I think it's probably good for government to handle jails instead of private companies. And I think it's, there's a lot of issues where I think government's the right thing if it's not corrupt. But the US government right now is the biggest organization in the world. And when we're trying to have a politician say, look at all the jobs I've created, well, are those jobs that people actually enjoy? Are they jobs that are actually needed? The Tennessee Valley Authority was something that was built that was unnecessary, and it used taxpayer dollars. And they said, look what we built. It was like a road to nowhere. So we have to start letting the market to make the decisions. We have to be transparent with the spending, and so that the people are informed about what's going on. I always, as a comedian, love to look up the dumb things government has spent money on. And I never use them in my jokes because they're so bad that people are just going to get upset. The only one I've ever used, because it's from my home state, is, did you know in the state of Utah, you can marry your cousin if they're over 65 years old?
What is the thinking behind that?
Hopefully they wrote that before Viagra existed, first off. Companionship, I don't know. I just figured someone had information on someone in the Senate, the Utah legislature. Because think about, how long does it take to propose a bill, to debate a bill, to amend a bill, to finally vote yes on the bill, and then have the governor sign off on it? Millions of dollars so some perv can marry their cousin? But that everybody knows, if you read this book, The Ascent of Money, it's a brilliant book on money done by this Harvard professor. And when you understand how wars are profitable for very wealthy individuals that are doing the bonds and the interest rate they get paid on, you get a little frustrated when you see a lot of the wars are created by private citizens. You're like, okay, what is the government's purpose? Why are they overreaching? Why are they spending so much money? $1 trillion a quarter right now? That's not sustainable. But here's why they do that. When you have to pay your taxes, you feel that in the moment that you pay it. But when they have a stealth tax called inflation, it slowly creeps in over time. And then it's like boiling the water on a lobster. It's just slowly the temperature rises. And that rising temperature makes people work harder, get second jobs. And unfortunately, it starts to destroy confidence in the government. It starts to destroy people's lives because now they're stressed all the time. And that stress leads to chronic illness. That chronic illness burdens the hospitals. The trickling effect of all this is because we have some level of ignorance. Seriously, the Secretary of the Treasury said some things that were so alarmingly ignorant, not understanding the impact of watering down the soup. I look at inflation as we just watered down the soup. So cool, it's the same amount of liquid. Yeah, but there's not the same amount of nutrition. And it's this constant moving target. People in the 1980s, if I asked them how much money, I was only 2 years old, but if I would have said, how much money do you want to have at retirement? Common numbers would have been 250 grand, 500 grand, or $1 million. But the reality is, you can't retire on that amount of money in most places in the United States right now. Maybe temporarily because interest rates are high, but when interest rates were at 2%, that's 20 grand off $1 million. I don't know who can live off 20 grand.
Especially if you're living for 25 or 30 years after you finish working.
And especially if you're living in a hospital because you're sick in a hospital taking pills that are prolonging your life, but not your energy. So we think that human interference is the solution for everything. But unfortunately, sometimes it's responsibility that makes the difference. And when there isn't responsibility, we get reckless with our spending of $35 trillion by saying, oh, no, but look, if those dollars really went where they're supposed to go, I don't think people have a problem with it. But when you look at all like a dollar goes in and how much actually went to the project it was supposed to go to, maybe it's 10 cents. You look at the United States is the most expensive health insurance because most of the money is going towards insurance companies, not to the hospitals. It's so fat and unfortunate. Like if we even just cut them out, not saying this is a solution, but like if we just took 3% of everybody's income, put it in an escrow fund, and the IRS is the one that managed that and said, if any hospital misappropriates these funds, they lose all funding, and we're getting rid of health insurance and covering that. The problem is demand and all this, but it's still better than insurance. Insurance is like just confiscating our health. We spend more money on health than any other country by far, and we're not even in the top 50 healthiest countries. That's crazy,
I've heard there's more expensive prices in many cases for people who have health insurance. And then if you say, look, I can't pay it, is there a cash rate? And then they'll just reduce it by like 70 or 80%. So you end up getting it a lot cheaper in many cases for health issues.
I paid $42 for a blood test that would have billed my insurance $900.
Wow. We went and got eardrops the other day with insurance for our 2-year-old son, $150 for an ear infection. Couldn't believe it.
If you ask for the full breakdown, which I recommend doing, anyone goes to the hospital, I need full breakdown of every line item. You'll see like cotton swab, $7, aspirin, $15. Like when hospitals first, like when there were hotels and hospitals in the 1900s, the night at a hospital and the night in a hotel room were pretty much equal. When hospitals skyrocketed in expense was because of executive benefits. Like this is a little bit of history, but you said we talked about, is history important? Executive benefits were, we're a big company that wants to attract the top talent. So we're going to offer things like a pension and health insurance to recruit them away from another company. And then the other employees hear about this. So like, hey, that's unfair. They've got these health benefits that we want, and they've got these pensions that we want. And so a company runs erroneous numbers thinking that they're going to earn 10% a year in the stock market. And when it doesn't work, the pensions don't make it. And so they've now got these requirements. Like California had a real problem with this a decade ago because the laws were so stringent that they had to pay pensions before they paid workers. So in Stockton, California, they couldn't pay fire. They couldn't pay for police. They couldn't pay for fire. And that place was getting huge crime. And if it was reported, they only responded to crimes in process, not after the fact, because they still owed so much money on pensions that they couldn't pay for existing workers. And so the problem is that creates like this entitlement. But I get it. Those workers were promised that. They worked those extra time. They might not have stayed there, but at the same time, the money's not there. And that came because those executive pays, everybody else asked for them. They started to offer it to everyone, which created an insurance industry. That insurance industry then started to up the prices, started to charge more for all these things. And, it's unfortunate that we've kind of got to this point. It all stems from one thing. We don't want to feel unsafe, and we don't want to take responsibility. We expect someone else to do it for us. But in communism, someone has to do the work. So when Cuba says everyone gets free housing, I just think everybody should go to Cuba and see what free housing looks like.
For sure.
I went to North Vietnam, very communistic. I want you to see what that looks like and see if that's really what you want. And just, again, if we read history of so much genocide that happened in the name of being an egalitarian society, and the reality is it's another form of tyranny, whether it's a capitalist that's trying to take all that they can, or whether it's a socialist trying to say everyone's equal but not the government, or whether it's a communist that's one person taking even more and holding everybody else back. It's all lacking free enterprise. It's all lacking personal responsibility. It's all lacking us becoming value creators. And when we don't have confidence in creating value, we succumb to really bad ideas.
Yeah, and the self-esteem is so much higher. Andrew Carnegie talks about it a lot. I think there'd be a lot of parallels that you'd find between that Carnegie story and the Rockefeller family of if you give someone just the money, their self-esteem's not there. They don't know how to properly manage it, and they're right back in the same place. Of course, there are some situations where a cash handout is necessary, but at the end of the day, people want skills to be able to contribute meaningful to society. There
are people that really have true disadvantages that I believe it's great if we take a duty and responsibility to support them. I think that that's important. I think that some so-called capitalists are so calloused about, you know, everything, and not recognizing that not everybody gets the same opportunities or has the same brain or doesn't have injuries or doesn't have major, like, and sometimes investing in people is one of the very best things that we could possibly do, even if it's a little care and concern and some cash. I think that that's really important.
Yeah, especially when you see kids and all that, obviously difficult situations. And
right.
Last question before the rocket round. On your best day, what's an affirmation that you would write on a flashcard that you could show yourself on your worst day?
Well, the thing I do write every single morning is surrender and serve. What I mean by surrender is, like, I believe that there's divine will that if I surrender to, I'll have the answers. And if I stay in service, then I don't get so selfish that I get caught up about comparison. So I write that all the time.
Awesome. Let's now move into the Win the Day Rocket Round. 10 questions for some quick answers. You up for this one, Garrett?
Let's do it.
Number 1, what quote inspires you the most?
I love the quote of John Lennon was once, his mom always taught him that happiness was the key to life. And so he went to school and his teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, happy. And the teacher said, I don't think you understand the assignment. He said, I don't think you understand life.
So good. So good.
I love that one.
Number 2, morning coffee or evening wine?
Morning coffee. I take a barista classes at Intelligentsia. I have a
nice.
beautiful espresso machine and just love the whole art of coffee.
Yeah, love it. Number 3, what's one bit of advice you would give your 18-year-old self?
Go all in with your wife from the very beginning. Just go all in, all the way. It took a while to go all in.
Number 4, what book do you gift the most, or is there a book that contributed most to the mindset you have today?
Well, I'd probably gift my own book the most, Money Unmasked. But the book that contributed most to my mindset today, this book really, the War of Art impacted me by Stephen Pressfield. It just really did. It just, you know, I actually now thinking I need to re-listen to it, but I don't know. I just listened twice this last week to the 4 Agreements, 2 times in the same week. Yeah.
Dan Martell recommended Turning Pro to me a few months ago, and that is by Stephen Pressfield. It is a phenomenal book as well. Yeah, he's amazing. I
love Buy Back Your Time. Dan's book's phenomenal.
Yes.
Dan's content, like, we're really close friends, but man, it has had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, for sure. Number 5, was there a vulnerability you once hid within that became your superpower?
I just think that I became really vulnerable about my, like, 4 or 5 things that happened in childhood that were really tough. And what I erroneously thought about them versus what they really meant, like, people have really connected to that.
Number 6, what's one thing you've learned about failure?
It's inevitable that we're going to make mistakes, but they don't make us less lovable. They just make us human.
Number 7, if you could sit on a park bench and have a conversation with someone alive or dead, who would it be?
I mean, I gotta have my grandpa. I mean, it's like tough because I'd like to hang out with Jesus. He seemed like a pretty cool cat.
Like looking in the mirror.
Like, yeah, I'd be like, hey, dude, how much? You look a lot more like Arab than I expected. I've been in Utah Jesus. I'm like Disney Jesus, you know? Right. So, but like my grandpa was such a hero to me, and like I just would have liked to ask him more questions.
Number 8, what tool or resource best helps you run your life or your business?
The productivity planner. I freaking love the productivity planner. Intelligent Change. So helpful. Love that thing.
Number 9, share one thing on your bucket list.
I want to get on stage and at Madison Square Garden and do my comedy show, have an intermission, and do my theatrical keynote to a sold-out crowd.
Amazing. I knew you'd have a good answer for that one.
Yeah.
And last question, number 10, what's one thing you do to win the day?
I start, like, this is the dumbest thing, but it's just the most recent thing. I stop eating at 6 p.m. so that I'm hungry right when I wake up, and I get to go eat right when I wake up. And it's like such a treat because I had the discipline to stop eating at 6. I'm hungry when I wake up, and now I'm ready to go take on the day. And it's like, yeah, I love breakfast now.
Your favorite
so
meal.
Silly.
Yeah, it's amazing how nice things taste when you've been fasting for a while.
Seriously. Well, like I used to like eat too late, disrupt my sleep. Then I wouldn't eat till later in the day, and I don't feel the same energy. And it's like, you know, I worked out first thing this morning, but I had my little peanut butter and I ate a few cherries on a rice cake. And then I got to have a really nice kiwi afterwards because I'd done a little sweating. And then I like oatmeal now like which is supposed to be like a pauper's food, but I love oatmeal, and then I have a little bit of raisins in it, and it's just like I love it. It's like a cool by myself in my thoughts, like listen to an audiobook, like take it easy in the morning after I wake up. It's nice.
Yeah, so good. Well, there are a bunch of ways to connect with Garrett, and we'll link to all of this in the show notes. You can follow him on Instagram at Garrett B. Gunderson, visit his website, garrettgunderson.com, and order his books on Amazon or through his website. Again, all that and more will be linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend. I really appreciate it.
This was fun, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Win the Day podcast. We want to hear your thoughts on what we covered today, so drop a comment on the YouTube version of this episode with your favorite takeaway, any questions you have, or what actions you'll be taking as a result of what was shared in this episode. And if you found value in the Win the Day podcast, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll find a link to both of those in the show notes. It'll only take you a few seconds, and more ratings really helps other people discover the show so they can get the mindset upgrade they need, and we can bring more winners into the Win the Day movement. That's all for this episode. Get out there and win the day. Until next time, onwards and upwards, always.